Hi, everyone. My name is ShammaRaghib, and I wanted to welcome you all to this conference. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you can build your first sales engine in your SaaS company. So, just to give you a little bit of a background, and before I start doing that, I'll probably share my screen. I have a small presentation to share with you. So, present. There you go. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about myself and what I do. I founded Girls Get Funded. Girls Get Funded is basically an organization which is supporting female founders. And the way we work is we are trying to make sure that our founders go through this journey of trying to understand how they can go from an idea to an eventually viable startup. And we are supporting them through the process. I'm also 12 plus year working in the SaaS world and in various formats. So there are startups, there are hardware related software solutions as well, and there are products which are in the data world, in the data management space, as well as customer service and health tech. So what I also do is I advise. I'm advising a lot of SaaS companies, and two of the most notable ones are Alice and Step Out. So Alice is a customer service model company, a SaaS company which is focused on customer service, and they have a conversational AI chatbot, and they're looking to rapidly expand globally very soon. Step Out is an application that helps a lot of different trainers in the personal health and personal exercise space to actually jump on a platform and get worldwide reach of audience as well as participants for their training programs. Um, Apart from that, I'm also a SaaS transformation manager at Calibra. So Calibra is a company that is currently valued at $2.3 billion. And I have gone through all the way from Series A to Series F with this company. And it's been a really exciting journey, and I've learned so much. So part of this is actually me trying to explain to you what I've experienced in terms of how to set up an effective sales cycle and sales process, especially in your early days in a SaaS company, and it's very crucial. You can always reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is at the rate ShammaRaghib and LinkedIn as well. So let's begin. And first of all, just wanted to highlight your customer is your North Star. And especially in the early days, once you have found that you have an idea that you want to work with, and then you have built the MVP, you have to listen to your customers, and you have to keep listening to what they require and what they think is right for their company at that particular point in time. And your product and your processes needs to reflect that. One of the things is you have to early on in the process understand the foundations of a SaaS sales. So, for example, what is a metric like annually recurring revenue, or what does it mean to acquire a customer? How much does it cost to acquire a customer? Uh, Other metrics like revenue that is being renewed per year, so annually recurring revenue as well. So all of these kind of different terminologies, you may need to familiarize yourself with it early on, but you also need to understand that the foundations of a SaaS sales cycle is eventually leading up to that revenue that you want for each particular lead that is generated. Um, Make best friends with your marketing team. That's very, very important, especially for a sales organization. Most of the new leads will be coming in from the marketing team, apart from some which may come from your internal salespeople, or any kind of other cold outreach from your sales development reps. But in this particular scenario, I'm want all the early stage startups to really focus on understanding how marketing metrics and marketing decisions feed into your sales organization as well. You have to realize if you're a self-service SaaS or a high-touch SaaS. So depending on that, your sales process might be slightly different. If it is more a self-service SaaS, you have to focus highly on customer success, customer service, and so on. And if it's a high-touch sales cycle, which requires you to have multiple touch points with your sales, which requires you to have a technical POC, for example, or requires you to have an expert who will define the business case for them. These are, these are basically standard enterprise SaaS sales cycle, and then you need to moderate or create your organization accordingly. Hire and pay sales reps, it's a no-brainer. There are some particular metrics that you need to look into when you are paying sales reps, initially, especially. And you find the right customers. So finding the right customers is really dependent on how you define your customers in the beginning. You have the total addressable market size, but within the total addressable market size, who are the customers who are the right fit for the product at this point in time, and who will be growing with you in the future as well. Handle objections is quite important. So if they have some kind of objection for your particular SaaS solution, what are they, and how can we mitigate them? So all of these things defined by your customer, it's quite important. Finally, the aim is to make them successful so that they stick around with you and your enterprise SaaS or your SaaS solution. All right. Now I want to explain a little bit the flow. So mainly I'm talking about leads that are coming in from the marketing. It could be events, it could be, customers who are outreached by our marketing team based on promotions and so on. So many different ways for our marketing team to have inbound customers, or sorry, inbound leads. And the next step is, of course, these leads are then converted into potential meetings or potential demos that the sales team then picks up, qualifies, and then finally it moves on into the sales pipeline further, where depending on how your enterprise is set up, whether you're a high touch or a low touch SaaS solution, you may need to involve pre-sales or professional services early on as well, just to understand their use cases, their landscape, and so on. And then finally convert them into customers, at which point customer success becomes highly active, and that leads to revenue as well. So it's quite important that initially you have this in mind, and you should be able to have one person each at this particular funnel if you're a small SaaS solution that needs to sell your software. Second thing is, of course, with customer success, it's super important because they will be focused on, from the same account, they will be focused on new revenue within the account. So it could be that one department decided to procure your SaaS solution, and now you have champions internally who will help you potentially expand within their different groups. The other is renewal revenue. So for example, if you are trying to get to a particular deal, which is only 1 year, and the end of 1 year, you're trying to renew them, whether or not they will be renewing. These are the kind of things that customer success play a pivotal role in. And of course, expansion. So for example, if you have expansion in terms of users, number of users using your platform, or the type of use cases you're going to cater to, or even expansion of your overall service as well. So all of these things are pivotal to the customer success organization as well. Um, Defining your customer, I've mentioned earlier, it's quite important. So how do you define your customer? Who are your customers who you can sell to right away? So I wanted to make a difference between target addressable market and target addressable market now. And the main reason for doing that is in initial life cycle of your SaaS is super important to really get your customers as soon as possible. So minimizing the sales cycle, minimizing the effort it requires for a customer to actually pay you, and eventually, get into a potentially recurring revenue year on year or month on month. So it's important to understand your customer, who they are, how will they evolve in the short term or long term? Is there a high churn potential? This is quite important to qualify prospects in or out very fast. So even as the leads come in, the first call that a sales dev representative or a salesperson should do is to qualify out or in the particular customer. And the sooner you do that, the better your sales cycle will be. Um, automate. So automation is mainly when you are trying to basically set up the whole sales cycle in such a way that at every stage you are either using a particular tool or a particular workflow that you trigger in order to go to the next stage. So quite a few of the CRMs currently have this workflow, but if they don't, you can create it in a manual way to begin with. And then finally, when you are at a stage after Series A or in between Series A and B, you can look into having a really strong CRM with capabilities that enable you to automate and enable you to track and monitor most of the key metrics that's relevant for the sales organization. So the culture is very important because um, when you are setting up your sales team culture in such a way that they have to they should or they should want to fill out as many details as possible within your CRM to track. It's easier for you to forecast. It's easier for you to understand which stages of the sales funnel they are in. It's easier for you to make hiring plans, which is quite important as well. So try to get that culture set up straight in the beginning and early stages of setting up your sales engine. Um, One thing that I've seen a couple of the startups not doing well is defining why an account was closed. So more often than not, when an account is closed, lost in terms of stages, um, it's it's almost always such that they are closed now, but they will probably buy in the future. So it's important to set up your sales engine in such a way that even the closed lost accounts, you are having someone to touch upon or target within a couple of months time, just to understand if their status changed or not. And explaining the why is quite important. And it's the same thing with churn. Why did a customer churn? What are the reasons which we can address in the future that maybe they will come back to us? Things like that is quite important to set up early on. Using workflow, jobs, or tasks to set up pipeline of events. It could be manual. It could be just using automation tools that are freely available. It's important to set this up and set your sales organization up for success so that they correctly follow up on the account touch points. Like I mentioned before, becoming besties with the marketing team. So it's quite important to align the sales and marketing team at the top of the funnel, because it's really important to understand, how many of these are converting to your actual sales, because that is a metric that a lot of investors look at. So, for example, when you are when you know your leads, do follow up. For example, do understand, um, this is something that uh, it depends on your SaaS organization, but there are a lot of times where inbound salespeople are separated out from salespeople. So inbound salespeople focus a lot of their time on cold calling, on emails, trying to book that first initial call or first initial demo with the salesperson. And um, in most SaaS companies that I've seen, and especially in the ones that are really successful, they have an inbound sales early on when they're just starting out, because not a lot of people in the industry know them yet. And one way to bring in their leads to commit is to do the cold calls and emails, and to make sure that they understand that we are one of the options they can also choose in this entire pool of SaaS world out there. So pre-sales is mainly for closing a deal technically. What I mean by that is a lot of more often than not, you will see pre-sales doing proof of concepts and trying to define their use cases and making sure that our product team also understand these different use cases. And a lot of the time, this will be about making or building the use case or business case in such a way technically that it fits well with the organization that you're selling to. So this could mean that, the person is responsible to understand what are the integrations available for your SaaS platform, or how can you implement it on a wide scale in a specific part of the industry, for example? What are the regulations that affect your use cases or your SaaS platform? And how are you tackling them as well? So these are the kind of things that pre-sales is pivotal, and it's a technical to semi-technical role. And they sometimes organization, if they have enough budget, they choose a particular expert to help them build a business case, or the pre-sales together with the sales team builds the business case for the customer themselves internally, so that they can make a sales to their management internally. um, Championing your customer is important. So what I mean by that is following up, making sure that, when sales are talking to them, that it comes from a position of, yes, I understand that you have a business pain point to solve, and this is how we will help you solve them. Um, Again, when you are going from leads to marketing qualified leads to sales qualified leads, and finally to potentially to deal closure, these are important stages where you need to know and understand the conversion rates of each stage of your funnel. And like I mentioned before, it's okay to initially start tracking them manually for reporting purposes, but eventually your aim should be to automate them. The best representatives are not always the ones that sell the most, but they are most often the people who sell to the right kind of customer. So again, it's quite important to understand who are the right kind of customer. What do they look at? What are their use cases? Things like that. Now let's dig in a little bit more into inbound sales, pre-sales, customer success, all of these different steps. So for inbound sales, the main aim for inbound sales should be to book demos with the sales or the pre-sales and or the pre-sales team. And the compensation should be based on the number of demos or meetings that they have been booked. And we should early on try to avoid compensating based on only the number of emails sent or the number of calls made, even though they should have a budget allocated to that, and maybe a KPI for that as well, just for tracking purposes and for understanding how they can improve their email communication or call communication and so on. When it comes to sales, so the sales team, the main aim actually is closing deals. However, they're also termed differently nowadays. So, for example, instead of telling that your salesperson is a sales dev, basically a sales account executive or an account executive, why don't you convert the name to relationship manager or an account relationship manager? Or an account development executive, so an ADE, for example. So the names kind of affect how a customer can often see a person. So if it is just for closing deals and it's a salesperson, more often than not, they will automatically think every conversation is about trying to sell them something, which it is, but they shouldn't probably feel that way. But that's just my 2 cents as well. So how do you compensate the sales team? There are a lot of different examples out there on how you can compensate and come to the compensation package or percentage for the base or the variable. The key is benchmark your competition or benchmark the industry. It's actually important to understand, where you are in the stage of your own company life cycle. So if you are pre-seed or seed, as well as if it is the early days, um, make sure that all of your sales reps have the same compensation and same variable, because people in early stage organizations, they talk, and you should motivate each person the same way. And that being said, hiring is very important. So even when you hire, you have to try to make sure that you're hiring the same level of people as well in the early stages. um, on target earnings, so you should define your variable rate, and there are many different calculations out there on how you can understand the variable rate of the compensation package as well. And based on that, you can define your base salary as well. So the rule is it should be 50-50. So whatever you define your variable rate is the same, should be the same as the base rate, in terms of calculations, which is dependent on your target revenue that you want to achieve, and the number of reps that you have, of course. And one simple calculation I've seen, and in some of the startups, is the variable is 1 month monthly recurring revenue. So if it is, let's say, 5% of the overall target, or 6% of the overall target, for example. Um, but again, if you are a bit more advanced stage, the base salary could be higher for sales reps which have 4 to 5 years experience compared to someone who just started off. But the variable rate, initially try to keep it similar or same. For sales team, some of the key metrics, again, in the SaaS world, it's highly advisable that sales team knows the product well, but not, be able to talk about all aspects of the product, but not necessarily mean that you have to know technically how an integration happens, for example, or really the technical details. You don't probably need to know. You can involve someone from product team or someone from a pre-sales team when it comes to that stage. However, some of the metrics that are key to basically track early on, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are many more that you can track. Sales qualified leads divided by the number of leads which are closed won. That number as a percentage is quite important to track. Pipeline size should be 3 to 4 times your target revenue, and these are basically the opportunities that might be coming in, and it's going to be easier for you to forecast based on that pipeline size as well, and the number of leads that are coming in eventually as well. Sales stages, so making sure that your CRM has the stages which are similar to this. And again, SaaS companies, they vary on how they term the sales stages as well. So researching, prospecting, connecting with the customer, qualifying the customer in or out, providing a demo of the SaaS solution, and then closing the deal. Again, this is just the sales team cycle. So after that comes the customer success and renewals team, if there is one. Um, how long does it take to close a deal is also something that you should definitely track from the early on, and the number of deals that are overall closed. This is a no-brainer. Revenue, ARR or MRR, these are the kind of metrics that you need to track. And on-target earnings, what is the on-target earning for each sales team, and average sales productivity, which is the new MRR or ARR booked per month. So that will give you an indication of your hiring prospects as well. All right, now we're talking about customer success. So I know that we didn't talk about pre-sales because depending on, whether or not your organization is big enough, you may or may not need a pre-sale. So initially, I've seen quite a few SaaS companies in the early days. They're leveraging their product manager in order to bring them in as part of the conversation, and there are benefits to that as well, because when a product manager is looking at what the customer actually wants or what the industry wants, that person will be able to go back to the dev team and internal, CTO, CIO, however you call it, and make sure that they understand that the market is going towards a particular direction. Pre-sales do quite often the same. However, the only time when you need a pre-sales and absolutely need a pre-sales is when you have technical proof of concepts where you have three or four different competition that the customer is assessing, and you may need to prove yourself. So in that particular case, involving the product manager um, probably won't be the best idea, because you will need to spend significant amount of time technically convincing the stakeholders of the customer, but also making sure that you build a proof of concept for them, which is, which they're convinced with, and you have a success metric for that proof of concept, so that when you are successful, and if you're successful, it goes through to the next stage of the sales cycle as well. It could be potentially closing the deal, or negotiation rounds, things like that. All right. So for customer success, the main aim, of course, is making sure that the customers are set up for success. And how you do that? Well, there are so many different ways, and it's all available, freely for you to research on the interweb. But the basics of it is, making sure that they understand the full sales cycle, and making sure that if it is a converted customer, um, that the customer is not going to churn after the first month of renewal or the first year of renewal, and so on. They are also the ones who deal with escalation. So if something goes wrong, and if level one support in your organization, or level one customer service as your organization is not able to handle it, they are the ones who have to dig in internally to find the right person, and make sure that these queries are addressed from the customer as well. NPS, so Net Promoter Score, is one of the metrics that's really vital to this particular role. And all the strategies around it is quite important to understand from a customer service success organization perspective. Now, in terms of compensation, it could be that your organization is set up in such a way that you provide a base plus bonuses on retentions, on land and expand deals. Land and expand deals, for example, land is mostly around customers giving you testimonials, feedbacks, use cases, white papers that you can reuse for the future. So this is a great thing to have in terms of building the industry trust. And expansion deals mainly is around new use cases as well. Renewals, number of renewals met could be one of the metrics where you provide different bonuses structure, and you can set up different spiffs for success for the customer service as well, customer success teams as well. So depending on which direction your organization is going, or which direction your teams are leading towards, using customer success to make sure that your implementation of the SaaS solution, is maintained, and there is still a need for it within the customer account. It's quite important. Some of the key metrics, and again, this is something that I've taken from different websites, and this is mainly around the fact that most of these metrics are very similar across different industries. So I've just taken the ones which are quite common. Customer lifetime value. So what is your revenue margin, and understanding your average MRR, or monthly recurring revenue, and then looking at the monthly churn rate as well. Churn rate can be defined by what is the revenue that is lost, and total revenue at the start of each financial period. Net Promoter Score is very often a metric that is crucial for customer success as well, because you need to understand if there are detractors, why are they detractor, or why are they promoter of your particular tool. There are a lot of analysts websites where customers often talk about SaaS products, and it's important to address them at different times, either with your customer success team or your marketing teams as well. um, Understanding the trends of activities that's happening within the tool itself is also something that could potentially be used as a metric. So understanding, if the adoption of your tool is increasing or decreasing, and ways you can improve that in conjunction together with your product team as well. So there are many different types of calculations you can do for that. Understanding the heart rate. So by what that means is understanding whether or not they are happy, they're overall how uh, confident are they on this software implementation, or are they eventually happy with us. That's basically the kind of signals you need to monitor as well. Customer acquisition costs, so this is more around sales and marketing expenses divided by the number of new customers that you are onboarding. Great. So finally, what I want to talk about is evaluating performance for accountability overall. So this is really focused more towards the core sales teams. How much time are they spending on each sale? Figuring out why the sales cycle are actually longer, and support these sales teams, account executives, pre-sales teams, customer success teams where needed. How quickly are your sales team responding to inbound leads? Are they integrating marketing into the way they approach a customer? So, for example, if there are content that's produced by marketing, are they leveraging that content and using it in their conversations with the customers? How often do they close the deal? It's basically to understand the productivity of each customer representative that you have and monitor them. How long does it take to close that, and where is the bottleneck? Um, Quite important early on, making sure that you equip them with competitive intelligence or battle cards against competition that's out there, and understanding their average deal size as well. How much does it cost for you to keep a salesperson? Um, are you losing any sales? What is the sales volume that's happening per month, per year, per quarter? How are sales representatives spending their time? Things like that early on is quite important to track. And finally, understanding if they're trained well, if they have any need for training, if they're happy. Most of the happy representatives are loyal, so they don't really leave organizations as fast as we see in the industry, for sales people to leave an organization if they don't achieve their quota. Now, sometimes what I've noticed is there are some founders who like to give positive motivation for salespeople who are doing really well. And then for those who are underperforming, if it is quarter over quarter, then they put them into a different kind of scale as well. Now, this is completely up to you, depending on the leadership team, depending on whether or not you have the revenue to keep going and hiring new sales reps. What is the cost of actually acquiring a new sales rep for you? These are some of the things that will influence the decision whether or not to basically give bonuses, or versus the other way around, so negative revenue approach as well. And yeah, so I think that was mostly what I wanted to talk about. I hope that I've been able to give you a little bit more insight onto how you can build a better SaaS sale engine in the beginning. But if you have any questions, comments, please reach out in Twitter or on LinkedIn. My name is ShammaRaghib, and yeah, it's wonderful to see you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.